everyone, we're live with Greg Mosse, who is going to start us off with an introduction to himself and his books.
Okay, well, first of all, let's just say the introduction with coughing and cough sweets was great. That was a good start. I am a writer and encourager of writers. At this moment, I'm in. So I'm in the Criterion Theatre, Piccadilly Circus, and that was the last call for Bleak Expectations, which is on tonight, because this is the theatre in which I teach my script writing program, Criterion New Writing, which is for mid-career playwrights to have the experience of being on stage in the West End and devising brand new plays that might be performed in big traditional theatres, Italianate theatres. However, that's just the reason why I'm here in this lovely aquamarine office. I'm also here because tomorrow Hodder and Stoughton will publish the first Maisie Cooper mystery, which is Murder at Church Lodge. And because I've been super busy ever since the very first lockdown, writing these novels, in November, Hodder will publish Murder at Bunting Manor. And next March, we'll publish Murder at Chichester Theatre. And then next July, so in 13 months, we'll publish all four of them. And the one that publishes next July is Murder at Notre Dame. Anyway, tomorrow, Thursday, the 13th of July, Murder at Church Lodge.
Good. So have you got a book cover or anything you can show us?
I got nothing. I'm here at the theatre doing another strand of my existence. I cannot even hold up a cover for you to look at. It's ridiculous. I could probably find one on my phone and hold it up to the camera. It would look really weird, wouldn't it? But let me see if I can do that. I've almost certainly got a cover that the publicist has sent me. Because, actually, I've just gone past a definitely more important image. Can you see that? So that is my wife's novel. It's a gift, an animated gift, is like falling confetti. Because my wife's novel, The Ghost Ship, is going to be #1 in the Sunday Times hardback chart this weekend. Anyway, moving on from that.
And there's a competition in the hardback chart at the moment, isn't there?
Oh my God, yes. Yeah, but when isn't it though? That's the thing. Oh, success. Okay. Is that working?
Go back a little bit.
Back a bit?
Yeah, that's it.
Oh, thank God for that. Murder at Church Lodge. Okay, there you go. Cover. Thank you.
So the blurb starts with Maisie Cooper is no detective. So what can you tell us about Maisie?
Maisie's 34 years old. The year is 1972. So it's set when I was 11. All my memories of that time are super vivid. You know how they are when you're 11 years old? Everything that happened when you were 11, you can remember really, really clearly. So she's 34 years old, which means that she was, she's a post-Second World War baby, and she's living a time when we've come out of rationing and austerity and all of that into a time basically of relative plenty. But when she left school, she followed in her older brother's footsteps, Stephen, who was 3 or 4 years older than her, and she went into the army for two tours of 3 years each. The army at that time did welcome women, but in a very narrow frame of reference. And so after 2 tours, when she discovered that she wouldn't get very far, there was not much advancement for her. She left and she went into the hospitality industry, and she works as a really high-class tour guide in Paris because she's good at languages as well as being generally really bright and presentable. Then what happens is she gets a call from her brother, her older brother, who is a bit of a wastrel, who wants her to come back to their family home in this tiny village in southwest Sussex because he's in trouble.
Sounds great.
Thank
my
you.
dad was in the army in 1972.
Is that right?
Yeah, I was doing the maths in my head.
Very good. Okay, well, another thing I guess that we could say about 1972 is that I was at a literary lunch over the weekend in Topsham, which is near Exeter, and I read a bit from the prologue of Murder at Church Lodge, and and I think it's quite funny as well as being, you know, a really good classical mystery novel. And the people I was reading to at this lunch, they laughed several times in the prologue, so that's a good sign.
Is the town that it's set in Sussex real or made up?
Kaz, it's totally real, but it's not its real name.
Okay. I
Yeah.
did wonder. I thought,
So the
yeah,
whole geography of it, my mum, who is 92 years old, she has read it and she knows every doorway, every bit of pavement, because I've not disguised it in any way except for changing the name.
nice. Is that to protect places where you put the bodies or how does that
You see, I'm hoping there aren't any real bodies, but
happen?
I mean, there's a blacksmith, for example, in Murder at Church Lodge, who's really quite like Don Wilkinson, who was the blacksmith when I lived there. And he's probably the only character who's like super close to the people I knew when I was 11 years old. But but they do fit the types. You know, it was a time of enormous class division. Obviously, you're far too young to remember it, but it's, yeah, a time of great class division between people who had land and people who don't, people who work on the farms, people who own the farms, between the town and the villages, between the church and not church, all of those things. Um, so all of those social divisions are really useful in a classical murder mystery story because they solve that problem that Agatha Christie says is the biggest problem of all, which is finding plausible motives for all of the suspects.
Sorry.
That's all right. I should have talked for longer.
I'm gonna read some of the comments now. If we can do it between coughing. Sam says there's a lovely paint colour behind you.
Yes, you're totally right. And the sofa, look, the sofa blends in with the wall. This is Fiona Callahan's office at the Criterion. She's the managing director of the Criterion Theatre Trust. I borrowed the office to do this.
That's very nice of her. Um, Leslie said hello. So is Laura. I can't see everyone who's commented. I think it's Joanne.
Okay, that was the latecomers call in the theatre. So that's good. It should stop now.
Um, Joanna said hello, and she also said that she saw Kate in Lincoln.
Oh, very good.
Someone has said they can't remember when they were 11. And Laura
Oh my
said,
God. Hang on a minute. Hesitate over that for a moment. Surely 11 years old is incredibly vivid because, you know, by the time you're 11, you're your own person, aren't you? You've sort of grown out of your parent and family orbit and you're becoming completely that's how it seems to me anyway, but yeah, why not?
Laura says she's got 2 books instead of 1 to get
Really?
today because she's got a reminder about Kate's book as well. No, someone else said they can't remember when they were 11 either. Maybe
Okay.
some people have chosen to block it out.
It could be that there's trauma and it's been blocked out. You're absolutely right.
Uh, Sam wants to know about your time being a translator. You must have had some great experiences.
Time being what?
A translator. You must have had some great experiences.
In fact, it was really interesting, and it comes up now and then because so most of the translation and interpreting work that I did was when I was living in Paris, and because I worked in organizations like independently with companies, but also with organizations like the OECD and UNESCO and what was then the European Community, you know, it was now the European Union. I got to see lots of really interesting stuff. I don't know if you recall, Kaz, but when we talked about The Coming Darkness last year, my thriller set in 2037, which is essentially a spy novel, the part of the inspiration for that was seeing those people who, um, huddle together in the corner of rooms and talk very quietly to one another because it's all secret and no one can know what they're saying. Um, but of course, it's that same knowledge of that city that sort of informs the overarching story in Murder at Church Lodge through to the fourth one that comes out next July, Murder at Notre Dame, because that's where the story ends up. Um, I guess there's another thing to say is that it's really high pressure translating and interpreting. I'm sure you all know that. Um, and I once went into UNESCO. You'll like this. I once went into UNESCO, and the chief translator or the chief interpreter was there, and came up to me and my colleague and said, "The Russian translator is late. Can you fill in?" And we both said, "We're very sorry, but we don't speak Russian." And the chief translator said, "But it's only for 5 minutes." And we thought, yeah, we could try. Because at the beginning of the conference, the person's going to stand up and they're going to say, "Oh, it's a pleasure to be here and it's wonderful to be in Paris." We could have just embroidered something, improvised, but we didn't. I had another experience. This one wasn't me, but this was in Brussels. And I had a colleague who was late. And when he turned up, I said to him, "What happened? I had to get somebody to fill in for you." And he said, "Well, I asked for an early morning alarm call and I thought that I didn't get it. But when I went downstairs and complained to reception, they said, 'Oh, yeah, we gave you an early morning alarm call. We said, Bonjour, monsieur, voilà votre réveil matin.' And you said, 'Good morning. This is your early morning alarm call.' And I guess you just went back to sleep." So, yeah, he woke up, he interpreted, and went back to sleep. Oh, another thing, which was actually super useful for the coming darkness, was I worked on some translation documents for oil refinery and desalination complexes in North Africa, and that's one of the things that comes up in that thriller. So that was handy too.
If you're translating technical stuff, do you need to have a knowledge of like the things that you're translating, or does it not matter?
Yeah, it does help, Kath. If I was doing, I don't know, if I was doing something in your area of expertise, genetics, I suppose I would think that maybe if I was stuck, I could ring you. I used to do that a lot. I had I had the best dictionaries that money could buy. That was like my biggest expense when I became a translator of text. At that time, the best engineering dictionaries were published by a German company called Ernst, and they published them in German, French, and English, French, and I only ever worked French to English and English to French, and now and then some Spanish to English. Yeah, they were the best technical dictionaries.
I was going to ask you about darkness because changing that to Murder at Church Lodge is quite a big jump, isn't it? You've gone from kind of full action, climate kind of fiction to a nice
Yes.
cozy crime. What made you want to do the jump? I think we talked about it briefly last year, didn't we? Because
Yeah,
you
we
knew
did.
that Lodge was coming out.
It was actually quite a weird sequence of events because back in February 2020, I was at the Emirates Festival in Dubai with a friend of mine, Luigi Bonomi, who is a brilliant, brilliant agent. So he runs Luigi Bonomi Associates. And we did two workshops where we were both on the platform together helping writers devise and develop story. And at the end of it, Luigi said to me, "You should write cozy crime novel, Greg. I think you'd be good at that." And normally when you talk to agents, they tell you the industry is doomed. You should never write another book. Forget it. It's over. So I thought, I'm well, seriously. So I went home, obviously, came home from Dubai, and a few weeks later, I sent him 20,000 words. So, like a quarter of a book, like the setup for a book, not much more than that, and said, "Is this what you mean?" And he said, "Yes, that's exactly what I mean. When you finished it, send me the whole thing." And the next day, first lockdown was announced. And I I drove around the country. Our son Felix was on stage in Norwich because he was in Les Mis on stage. So I went and picked him up from there. I went and picked up our daughter Martha from North London, from Angel, where she lives, and brought them home to Sussex. And I don't know if you recall, but did you hear that? That was second latecomers. They're really pushing their luck now, aren't they? But you remember how becalmed everybody was, and how we consumed like vast amounts of news, and the news was all speculative, and it was about now, February, March 2020, but it was also about the future and what that would bring and how it would evolve and all the rest of it. And of course, I got completely distracted from the cozy crime novel, and I wrote The Coming Darkness instead, which is set 15 years into the future in 2037, and imagines a world in which all the things that we're worried about in 2020 have become more urgent. But that went really well, and that was sold to Moonflower to be published, and then it's in the sort of slow process of being edited and edited again and copy edited and proofread and all the rest of it. So as soon as that was out there, I went back to the cozy crime novels that I had started before The Coming Darkness. So that's how that happened.
So, how are the follow-ups to The Coming Darkness coming along?
Okay, so I've written The Coming Storm, which I super enjoyed writing. And I had an advantage there because my first draft of The Coming Darkness was about 170,000 words, which is like crazy long. Take out all the the repetition and the dross, there was still about 50,000 words of plot that I couldn't really accommodate in a 98,000 word thriller. And so I took that away and put it in a separate folder. And when I came back to The Coming Storm, that subplot I moved a bit later in time because The Coming Storm is only a couple of months after the end of The Coming Darkness, and that was my starting point for the follow-up novel. Uh, Paperback of The Coming Darkness comes out in September. The Coming Storm hardback will come out in April 24. So, like in the middle of the sequence of 4 cozy crime novels.
That's going to be an interesting change when you do author events, isn't it? Switching
It's
between.
crazy. It's seriously crazy. I've got. I'll be in Harrogate. Will you go to Harrogate perhaps? Oh,
Mhm.
we have to meet. So in Harrogate, I have an event with Ava Glass, Jack Dewars, and Tim Glister, where we're talking about novels with spies in them, essentially, post-Bond spy novels, which is really interesting. I interviewed Ava Glass, Jack Dewars with Holly Watt at the Lyme Regis Festival recently, where I was the chair, so I wasn't talking about my stuff. But also in Harrogate, I have to talk about the cozy crime as well. So it is going to be quite split personality between those two things.
So you're going to be at Harrogate for the whole festival?
Do you know what? I will get there like Thursday lunchtime, probably. And then because I have an event somewhere else on Saturday night, I'll have to leave sort of Saturday afternoon. But actually, I have another thing on this, right? Because my background, before all the lockdowns and all the rest of it, and having time to sit quietly and write novels, all of my creative writing was as a playwright. So as a playwright, it's completely normal for me in, I don't know, January and February, I'm writing a historical drama about highwaymen and smugglers. And then in March and April, I'm writing a contemporary drama about a family that's falling apart under the pressure of an elderly relative with Alzheimer's. And that's completely normal for a playwright to be doing one thing and then something else completely different, using the same skills, hopefully, of, narrative structure, but switching from genre to genre. And of course, when I write, I don't write theatre currently because I'm too busy with novels. But when I do, I write plays with songs and musicals as well. I've got a composer partner that I work with. Um, so yeah, genre is like something I think you can pick and choose.
Yeah. I think things are interesting when they cross genres as well.
Yeah, totally. That's true too. Do you read science fiction, for example?
Yeah, I love science fiction,
Yeah, me too.
and I quite like speculative crime.
Yeah. Oh, have you read Eve Smith's new book, One?
I have not.
She had it's really recent. She had a launch this week, I think. It imagines a future quite far into the future. I want to say maybe even as much as 100 years, with a future authoritarian government in the UK with a one-child policy, and that's at the sort of the heart of the drama. I read it recently. It was great.
I heartily recommend Sarah Moorhead. She writes
Yeah,
as essays Moorhead as speculative crime. I think if
excellent,
you're a fan of Philip K. Dick, you would enjoy it.
excellent. Yeah, it sounds great.
Are you tempted to adapt any of your, especially like the cozy ones for the stage?
Yeah, you are right. They could. You could just about squeeze the plot into 2 hours or maybe 2 hours 15 of stage time. Um, but I don't. I mean, I'm capable of doing that, but I'm more interested at this point in my life in writing more of them. Um, so, for example, Luigi and I went to see my editor Beth Wickington at Hodder and Stoughton, and I said, we had the discussion about publishing schedule and um, strategy and so on. And she said, "Do you know what Maisie Cooper is going to do next?" And I gave her a piece of A4 paper on which I had four tiny synopses for the next four novels. And she said, "Great, that looks wonderful. Are you going to write them?" And I said, "I'll write them once you've bought them. So I'm not going to write them till then." So if the Maisie Cooper novels go really well, I've got four more in sort of outline plot that I can write.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, it is. That's how I like it.
Encouragement for us all to buy the Maisie Cooper
Oh my
novel then.
god, yes.
Um, Sam has said she loves the titles.
Good. They've all got to have the same rhythm, haven't they?
Hmm. Well, you've got that with the coming darkness and the coming storm.
Yeah.
So,
There is actually a third one. I'm in totally the same position with Moonflower. I have a really brilliant editor inside Moonflower, but also an external editor that they use who's worked on both The Coming Darkness and The Coming Storm. And we had a triangular meeting the other day about what I was going to do next. And there is a third volume, but it's like all of publishing. The Coming Storm has to go well, like The Coming Darkness, or they won't want the third volume, will they? So, you never know till it plays out.
which is sad for people if they're following a series, I guess, because if it didn't do as well and the didn't come out, you could be left hanging and never knowing how
Yeah,
things
you're
are going to
absolutely right. Although, of course, these days, were that the case, I guess I would be in a position to write the third one, which is called The Coming Fire, for which I have quite a lot of notes, and I know more or less what happens, although I haven't written any of it. Um, I could write it and make it available personally, couldn't I? I probably wouldn't want to jacket it and make physical books, but as a downloadable book, I could totally do that off my own bat.
Yeah, self-published.
Hmm.
So, does the playing with genre ideas that's come from theatre sort of inspire your writing in the novels?
Yeah,
Do they
completely.
inspire
Yeah.
your writing?
Yeah, yeah, and just to follow on from, I was telling you about going into Hodder to talk to them about, what will happen next. On the way out, Luigi and I were just chatting about if because all four of those cozy crime novels for Hodder, I've finished them all. So there's a bit of editing to do on the third one and the fourth one, but not very much. We were talking about what else I might write, and because I've got the future series, The Coming Darkness and so on, in 2037. And this series 50 years ago, in 1972, I I told Luigi that I'd like to write something in the present day, and he told me what he thought would make a good hero for the sort of novel that I was describing. And when was that? That must have been like the end of April. So I've actually got quite a first draft of a novel inspired by that conversation, which when I have time to polish it and edit it and create another draft and so on, I will show it first to my wife, Kate Moss, and then she'll tell me what to do to make it better. And then I'll send it to my agent, Luigi, and I'll see what he says.
It must be nice having another author to like swing ideas past.
It's brilliant. It is the only like really important thing I've ever done. Yes.
Yeah. 1972, when the book is set, you were 11.
Yep.
You're gonna remember everything, even though you say that, yeah, when you're 11 is really important. So, how much do you have to go back and check that you've got the details right? Because you are writing it in living memory for a lot of people.
Yeah. So I was telling you about reading the prologue at the literary lunch. Um, when in that prologue, Stephen looks in the cupboards in the kitchen, and the only thing that he can find to eat is this horrible dehydrated ready meal. And if I said to you that that was a Vesta ready meal, does that mean anything to you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was like the first thing that I ever cooked, and there was like this terrible packet of rice that was hard like bits of bullets that you were supposed to fry in butter and then sort of add water to it. And then this sort of grey powdery stuff with some indistinguishable lumps of what might be meat that eventually would simmer into anyway, the Vesta ready meal. I can remember that as the first thing I probably cooked as an independent human being. Um, that was like a that you would buy in the corner shop, and it was a kind of meal, and it was simultaneously awful but also weirdly delicious. It probably had a lot of MSG in it. I don't know, but probably.
Oh,
Anyway, the answer to your question is I remember all that really clearly. But when I was writing about it, I went online and I did picture research so that I could see actually on my screen what the packets looked like, the size of them, handling them, all of that. And then I would do the same for other things like Radox bath liquid or Eucryl tooth powder. Does that mean anything to you? So Eucryl. So at the same time as there was toothpaste in a tube, lots of people used tooth powder, which was like a pink powder. It looked like a bit like a powder compact. It looked, but sort of this dusty powder. And you'd wet your toothbrush and put it in the powder, and then brush your teeth with it. So all of those things, they exist in my memory, but I did check them to make sure that I was right.
I can't remember who else I was telling about this. There's like an M&S archives in Leeds, and they actually
Sorry, say that again, Kaz. You just faded out.
there's an M&S archives in Leeds, and they actually keep packaging from years ago, so you can go back and ask for a specific year and see clothes they used to have, and like
Brilliant.
packages and things like that. You can just go in as a member of the public.
Amazing. I love that.
Handy for research.
Yeah, really handy. Oh, the other thing, of course, is because there are scenes set in the pub and there's a jukebox, I did have to make sure that I had the right songs. Murder at Church Lodge is set in February 1972, so it couldn't be a song that came out in April, right? Obviously. So I did that stuff. Um, the local newspaper, the Chichester Observer, is quite important in the plot. So I had to make sure that there were some simple images in the newspaper. It wasn't text only. And so I had to go to the library and find some facsimiles to make sure of that.
Cool. There's quite a few comments about Vesta meals.
Yeah, is that ringing a bell?
It is a lot of people saying they use them a lot. I remember that you used to deep fry a bit of them.
Yeah,
You got some crispy noodles or something on top of something.
yeah. But of course, you see, my character, my lead character, Lucy Cooper, she's left all of that behind, and she's spent a few years living in Paris, where, let me tell you, there's no dehydrated Vesta ready meals being eaten.
But the thing is, as nice as things are, so you might go to, you can appreciate all of the things in Paris and everything else, but sometimes you do want something that is just rubbish and bad for you.
Do you?
Do
Oh
you
my
not?
God. Well, I tell you what, Maisie doesn't. And but when she eats it, she finds it obviously incredibly satisfying. You know, like if you're really hungry and you go and get McDonald's and you think, this is barely food, I am loving this, right? That's just how it is.
Exactly. Someone else has got memories of cooking to me on the Thanksgiving guides.
Sorry, say that again.
Someone has vague memories of cooking a best meal on the camp stove in guides.
Oh yeah, that is absolutely right. It was exactly the sort of thing that if you did Duke of Edinburgh or Boy Scouts or Girl Guides, it's exactly the sort of dehydrated meal that you would cook up for yourself in a bit of damp woodland, wishing that you were dead or at home in your own bed.
I wasn't a Duke of Edinburgh or Girl Guides kind of kid. I refuse to camp. I will not camp anywhere for anybody or anything,
Kaz,
including
I have left camping behind.
no, never, including a music festival. I will go home.
Well, I'm
Right.
with you. I don't go to music festivals. You know,
Well, I go to music festivals. I just won't camp.
I understand. So you know the Latitude Festival, which is in Suffolk, which is quite a genteel festival. So, because of the Women's Prize for Fiction, of which my wife Kate is a founder, they've done over the years, they've done lots of events there. And so she gets, if she wants it, a free ticket to go to Latitude. I don't go.
See, I would go. I'd just stay in a hotel and leave and go back and then go back again.
That's the spirit.
But Sam really likes camping.
I can imagine that. Can I see her message? Camping or glamping? That's my question.
No, she's a cat. She would be camping. I
Is
wouldn't
she?
even glamp. No,
Not even glamp.
no, still too close. No.
The other thing about, going to the festival and standing a quarter of a mile away from the band and, you know, in amongst lots of other people, I just, at every moment, I would be happier to be at home writing a new book. At every single moment.
Oh no, I think if you get the right bands, it can be a really special experience.
Yeah? Who would
Yeah,
that be for you?
I don't know. I've seen quite a few bands. Rage Against the Machine are pretty impressive for a
Uh-huh.
book festival.
Yeah. Our daughter went to Glastonbury and we looked after her baby while she was there, and she did have a great time. But when she arrived, I think she arrived at Glastonbury on the Thursday, and I picked her up on Saturday night because she'd had enough and she wanted to get back to her baby.
Fair enough. I mean,
Yeah,
I can understand,
yeah.
but we've distracted you away from Murder at Church Lodge.
That's all right. I tell you what, I could tell you also. So here's an odd story. I think it was odd at the time, but I can see the logic now. It's a publishing thing, okay? So the second one, Murder at Bunting Manor, when I wrote it, working title was Murder at Stoughton Manor. Stoughton, Stoughton. And my editor at Hodder and Stoughton said the marketing department would like to know if you could change the title. And that's not the sort of thing I really care about. So yeah, sure, I'll change the title. Why is that? And they said, well, people don't know how to pronounce Stoughton. And I said, but it's the name of your company. You realize this? And they said, yeah, we know, but we don't know whether it's Stoughton or Stoughton or Stoughton or what is it. And I'm super old, so I know from back in the mists of time that Mr. Stoughton pronounced it like that, 40 years ago. Anyway, they said, "Can you change the title?" And I said, "Yes, I can. Do you care what it is?" And then they said, "Well, the design department would like to put bunting on the cover. So could you call it Murder at Bunting Manor?" And I said, "Yeah, of course I can do that." And then when we got the design, there wasn't any bunting on the cover. So
Weird.
it's Murder at Bunting Manor, but there isn't any bunting.
Well, maybe that's what they were aiming for. Maybe when they said they wanted bunting on the cover, they just wanted it in the title.
They were just playing me, weren't they?
Maybe.
Okay, moving on. Third one, Murder at Chichester Theatre. So Murder at Bunting Manor is a month later, so that happens in March 72. Murder at Chichester Theatre, that will come out next March. The action actually happens in April 1972. And one of my very first jobs was as junior stage crew member at Chichester Festival Theatre. And so again, I've got these super vivid memories of um, me working there a few years later, but I know the place really well. And I happen to know that the first show in the summer season at Chichester Festival Theatre in 1972 was the Beggar's Opera, which is, the one that Mac the Knife comes from, that became very famous because of the Brecht and Weil version of it. Okay, so I've made that in Murder at Chichester Theatre. I've made that the play that's being rehearsed, which is the backdrop to the murder that Maisie obviously solves. So it fits precisely the calendar of reality of rehearsing the Beggar's Opera at Chichester Festival Theatre back in 1972. But none of the characters are like the people that were actually in it. It's different director, different cast members, all of that. So
Would you
that's up.
would you keep all the Maisie mysteries in the 70s?
Well, there's gonna my plan, with the four that I've outlined that are still to come.
Mm.
Uh, there's one a month. So the four that we're publishing are March, April, May. Murder at Notre Dame happens in Paris in May. And that's also got a factual background, which I really enjoyed. I did spend some time researching this. Um, the Rothschild family had a surrealist ball in Paris, in somebody's vast mansion. I've set it in a big marquee on the piazza in front of Notre Dame, but the one that inspired it happened in a vast mansion somewhere in Paris. And Audrey Hepburn, for example, came with this headdress thing that was like a bird cage, and she was made up like she was a bird in a cage inside her cage headdress thing. There was a politician who famously came wearing a two-faced mask that looked forward and back. Um, and so all of these surreal costumes. And that was one of the inspirations for the setting in Paris of the fourth one, Murder at Notre Dame. I like that combination of real things that provides a framework for the imagined things. And even though I don't write historical fiction like Kate does, that is what she does. So she's currently writing novels set in the French Wars of Religion, and that provides the spine of some real genuine dates and some real genuine dramas. And so that's like the panoramic drama in the books. And within that, she's got a framework for the interpersonal stuff which she invents.
I'm just looking at the other comments that are coming in. Someone would love to see you cover the 80s.
The 80s. Well,
Hmm.
Maisie will have to do much crime solving, but this is a really good comment. Okay, so in Murder at Bunting Manor, Maisie Cooper meets a young woman of 16 years old called Zoe Pascal. Zoe in 1982. Okay, in fact, I have to let me just wind back slightly. About 15 years ago, I used to teach an MA in creative writing for the University of Sussex. So I wrote this MA program and had it validated with external examiners and all the rest of it. And it was a very practical program, very, very successful, and lots of people who were on it have become published authors. And while I was doing that, simultaneously, I taught an open access program at the South Bank Centre in London. And it was exactly the same content, but the University of Sussex MA cost £13,000, and the evening classes at the South Bank Centre cost 12 quid each. And if you did all of them for 2 years, you got the same content as the 13 grand MA in creative writing. And it was like, that was the point of it. It was an open access program. Nobody had to audition. You could just turn up if you were available, and you had 12 quid. Okay. Whilst I was doing that, I used to encourage all of the participants to do NaNoWriMo, the National November Writing Month Challenge of 50,000 words in the month of November. And of course, I did it too, so that I could share a shoddy first draft of a novel that I, punched out 1,700 words a day for 30 days without worrying about tomorrow, just making sure that I filled the page and told the whole story. And I did that for, I think, 3 years, maybe 4 years. And the stories that I wrote were set in the early 80s, with at their heart a character who was 26 years old called Zoe Pascal. So when I wanted this younger woman, this woman on the cusp of being a grown-up at 16 years old for Murder at Bunting Manor, I made her that same person. So those novels I wrote for NaNoWriMo, they're not published because I've never reviewed them and revisited them and revised them and edited them and all the rest of it. But I've still got those shoddy first drafts. So I could turn those into the Zoe Pascal adventures, and they would be set in 1982.
Brilliant. There you go. So you've got the answer for whoever wanted to be them covered in. I know the next one is Sarah Blackburn, who is weirdly the only person I have ever met in my entire life who was born in the same place as me. She went to school in Pring, where the Rothschilds had a natural history museum that they started, apparently. Sam wants to know if you'd be interested in writing for quick reads. The Black Mountain was fantastic. It really was fantastic.
Oh, that's really nice of Sam. Yeah, thank you very much. It is good, isn't it? In fact, just a small digression on that. For the Kate's books have never been published, translated into Arabic. They're quite dense, they're quite long. Translation is really expensive, I mean, translators aren't very, very well paid. It's such a long job. However, her two quick reads, so there's the Black Mountain, and the one before that was called The Cave. And later on, she expanded that story into a full-length novel called The Winter Ghosts.
I've read Winter Ghosts.
Okay, good. So they are both going to be, they've both been purchased for a modest amount of money so that they can be translated into Arabic, because they're essentially they're simplified English, aren't they?
Yeah.
But the answer is yeah, I would, excuse me, I'm going to sit up a bit because it's the end of a long day. I would definitely be interested, if only I were famous enough, to write a quick read.
Well, can't be far off being famous enough.
Time will tell. If you meet the quick reads people, volunteer me, all right?
I don't think I even know who the quick reads people are.
I've never met them. No.
Because I love the quick reads. I think they're such a good idea. They're a great way of drawing people into reading. And even if you are like a proficient reader, you find so many things to enjoy.
I agree.
So they don't exclude anyone.
Agreed.
By including people, which is fantastic.
But then I think if you look at the writing of Agatha Christie, for example, so Kate recently wrote an Agatha Christie story for a collection of new Marple stories. You may have seen it. Other people in it were Val McDermott,
I remember
Dorothy Coombs, Natalie
that.
Haynes, a bunch of really interesting writers. And if you and Kate's is very authentic Marple style story, and that's actually slightly simplified English. Agatha Christie doesn't go in for multiple subclauses and difficult stylistic things.
That was a Marple collection, right?
Yeah,
Had like Lee Bardugo in, who wrote the Shadow and Bone series and
did
things
it?
as well as a contributor. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. I got it for my birthday.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it was really good.
Good. Kate's story was called The Acid Soil. And I think that's a really good Marple style title because of how interested Marple is in gardening.
I'd never read a Miss Marple book.
Say again?
I've never read a Miss Marple book.
Oh, never. Oh, okay. Oh, well, you must. She is great.
I've shockingly read about 2 Agatha Christie novels.
Say again?
I think I've read like 2 Agatha Christie novels ever.
Right. Okay, so here is a good Agatha Christie novel story. Um, when the Second World War broke out, Agatha Christie was worried that she might die. And she was already a successful and important novelist. And she wanted to make sure that she completed the cycles for Miss Marple and for Hercule Poirot. And so she wrote 2 novels and put them away in a safe, or her solicitor did. And the Marple one was called Sleeping Murder, which is a completely brilliant story about recovered memory. Incredibly modern, really. And the other one, the Hercule Poirot story, was Curtain. And then, of course, she did survive the Second World War and they were eventually published. But isn't that an amazing thing to do? So that your literary legacy and your characters, exactly like you were saying earlier, there is some kind of closure for them, just in case you die.
Well, I think as readers, when you invest, because if you think as a reader, you're investing selfishly, you're investing a lot of hours of your time, depending on how fast you read, sometimes weeks, even months of your time on a book or a series of books. You kind of do become invested in those characters and you do want to know what happens. You want a solution at the end of the
Yeah, I
series.
always do.
For how long the series is, the longer the better for a lot of people.
I couldn't agree more. I was saying to Ellie Griffiths the other day, is it really true that there won't be any more Ruth Galloway? And she said, Greg, you can only write what you want to write. And I said, yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely right. Um, but is it absolutely definite that you will never write another one? And she said, well, we'll see. Because, of course, there might come a moment when she does want to write another one, you know? But I really admire her professionalism and the fact um, that she's created that consistent quality of world that those mysteries take place in. But back to that other thing that you were saying, I like all the narrative questions to be answered at the end of a book. And often when I'm working with novelists and I'm encouraging them to create a really good unifying climax for the end of the book where all the questions get answered all together in the same sequence of dramatic action, they'll say to me, but I like it when the questions aren't answered. And I say, well, you can do that. But in what way are you rewarding the reader for all of their attention if you don't resolve the narrative questions that the story has posed? How are they being rewarded? They're not, are they? Anyway, that's what I think.
Yeah, one of our admins hates cliffhangers in a book.
Hmm.
Just absolutely, an ending. For her, I said to Ellie when she was talking about ending them, it was a really brave decision. As a fan, I was sad, but I thought it was like a courageous decision of hers to know that it was right for her to stop.
Yes, absolutely right. Yeah. I think the first time I met her was probably about 7 or 8 years ago. And I hadn't read any of her books when I met her at a festival. And I said to her, your books sound fantastic. I will go away and read them, which of course I did. And I remember saying to her innocently, because of the Norfolk coast thing, have you got a plot where coastal erosion reveals the evidence from the past? And she smiled and said, yes, I have.
I think the first time I met her was 2012.
Yeah.
2012. An event in Waterstone. She's doing a signing and no one else went, and we got to chat to her for ages.
Lovely.
It was ace.
Yeah. I mean, it's sad that nobody else went. That's
No,
sad.
it's really sad. And now if she goes to like a Waterstones bookstore, it's like a sellout, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Massively different.
A
But
friend of mine was on tour in America a few years ago, and he ended up in this bookshop in the basement of the bookshop after the bookshop had closed. And there were only 3 people there listening to him. And one of those people was clearly somebody that was only in there because they were homeless and they had nowhere else to go to, and it was warm and dry. Another person was the member of staff assigned to look after him. And the other person had got locked in by mistake when they shut all the doors.
oh no.
And he said, I gave them the full 40-minute speech and then I let them go.
Someone has said Ellie was at our live event in Leeds this year, which was.
Excellent. Yes. Oh yeah. I obviously I wasn't there, but it looked like it went super well.
It did. It was good enough that we may attempt a second one.
Good heavens.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, obviously, you know where I am. I'd love to help.
Excellent. This is good. Sam said she met you and Ellie last year in London.
Yes, at Capital Crime. Yeah, in
Yeah.
Battersea Park. It was absolutely Baltic that day. And I know that the capital crime thing happened over 3 days, and like the Friday and the Sunday were quite nice. And we were there on the Saturday. And by the end of the afternoon, I was wearing 4 layers and a woolly hat. It was just so cold, but worth it, obviously. I chaired an interview with Neil Dawes, who you'll know, Tony Kent, Imran Mahmood, and somebody else. Unforgivably, I can't remember. But lovely event.
Was Sam doing her proper northern thing of not even having a coat?
Oh my God, she probably had a t-shirt and a nice drink. That's what I reckon. She probably went out of the event for ice cream. Who knows?
Yeah, she says she was wearing a thin cardigan. So what have you got planned for launch day tomorrow?
I have nothing planned.
You haven't got a big launch event?
No, not at all. I for both The Coming Darkness and for Murder at Church Lodge, I discussed this with the publishers, and they were keen to do it, to do something for me, which is very nice of them. But I don't feel the need for a ceremony to mark it, and I'd much rather the money would. Okay, so that was the 5-minute call for the end of Act One. Okay. Yes, so I didn't want to. I'd rather they spend the money on marketing the book than on a launch party. I'm not. I'm not really a party person. I mean, I like people, but I like doing things with people. I don't like sort of small talk and all of that stuff, standing around with drinks and sausage rolls for no good reason. And so no, I haven't got anything planned at all. And also, Kate's on tour for the Ghost Ship, so she's not at home. So, do you know what I'll do? I'll probably edit my new book.
Not planning to join the tour for the Ghost Ship?
No, she's just so far away. She's like Crewe or somewhere like that, like so far from Sussex. But also, we have my 92-year-old mother at home. We used to have all three of our remaining parents at home. We used to have Kate's parents, Richard and Barbara, but they have both of them died, and so we only have one left. And but the caring responsibilities means that it's we have to do complex organization if we're both going to be away.
Makes sense.
And in fact, over this tour, Kate's got I think 42 events. So and I was away with her for the 4 days for the West Country swing that we've just done. And but I can't be away again straight away.
But you will be in Harrogate very soon.
That is, in fact, she is on her way back from Nantwich as I drive north to Harrogate on Thursday morning.
Are you staying in Harrogate?
Yeah, I
And
don't know where yet. The festival will tell me where I'm staying. It will either be the Swan or it will be, one of the hotels they use really close by.
yeah, I'm sure it'll be fine. They're all
And
such a nice place.
I think it's great. I think the first time I went to the festival there was probably 12 years ago, and it's always been just the most brilliant event. And I've been a teacher on Creative Thursday quite a lot, so I'll probably see people I know from that as well. Early career writers who are developing.
That'll be good.
Yeah,
But yeah, we'll definitely meet up because I'm there
good.
on Saturday, Friday night and Saturday is the plan.
Are you going to the murder mystery dinner? I'm being an author host at one of the tables at that. I've never done that before. I've no idea how that's going to play out.
No, because I think I'd have to stay in Harrogate if I did that.
Yeah, that's evening event. Yeah.
I think it finishes after the last buses go back to Leeds.
Yeah, I imagine. And what is that? Like 45 minutes?
Yeah, it's not long. It's
Yeah.
pretty.
I will send you my mobile number. I'll DM my mobile number and then you can text me if you're there. And if I'll find you.
I'm definitely there. On Friday for some like a Pan Macmillan event, and then Saturday just to hang around.
Excellent. What's the Pan Mac event?
I do not remember all the details.
Are they doing something perhaps for Laura's The Square of Sevens? That's it, isn't it? Laura Shepherd Robinson's new book that's
Okay.
doing really
Yeah,
well. I haven't read it yet.
it could be. Yeah, they was like they zipped out invites into people's inboxes and things.
Well, that's lovely. If I do have any time on the Friday, there's a Hodder and Stoughton thing that I think I ought to go to because they're doing me the favor of publishing my books.
Oh, that's it. It's authors and bloggers drinks.
Pardon?
It's authors and bloggers drinks. The Pan Mac.
Oh, that's good. Excellent.
There you go. Find everyone what they're going to go away and buy. Because Laura said she was up for 2 books when she was watching, so remind everyone. Give them the Ghost Ship and your book. Because we've got a minute left.
Sorry, what did I could only hear half of that.
We've got 1 minute left.
Yes.
So remind everybody what they're going to go away and buy. And you can plug
Oh,
Ghost Ship and your
oh
book.
well, go and buy whatever you like. If you like cozy crime with a properly resolved, complex but entertaining murder mystery in the classical style, buy Murder at Church Lodge. If you like the idea of a 17th century lesbian pirate adventure on the high seas with a backdrop of the French Wars of Religion, buy The Ghost Ship by Kate Mosse. If you're feeling flush, buy them both.
Brilliant. And then thanks again. You are welcome anytime to join us.
Kaz, it's wonderful that you do this. It's an amazing thing that you and your dad have created. And I think UK Crime Book Club is an amazing and wonderful thing. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you.